Through time, the world's richest men were always subject to government control. Emphasis on were. That's not true anymore. Elon Musk proved a single American company now can set its own foreign policy and act unilaterally for or perhaps against American interests. Musk's Starlink internet system provides communication services for the Ukrainian military. And Musk reportedly personally scrubbed Ukraine's plan to attack a major Russian installation. If I had agreed to their request, meaning the Ukrainians' request to turn on a part of Starlink, then SpaceX, that owns Starlink, would be explicitly complicit in a major act of war and conflict escalation. Musk's statement confirms he views himself as more powerful than some governments, even more powerful than the Pentagon, for example, in the war in Ukraine. And he has no problem using his power to dictate foreign policy throughout the world. Of course, he controls large investments in artificial intelligence, SpaceX, Tesla, and, of course, Starlink. It would be as if Ford refused to build B-24 bombers during World War II out of fear of escalating the war. The president of Ford, Henry Ford, would have found himself in a world of hurt, if not in jail, had he done that. Obviously, that's different for Elon Musk right now. Joining us now, award-winning independent journalist Glenn Greenwald. Glenn, am I right to point out that we are in this uncharted territory of a private individual being able to have their own foreign policy?
I don't think so. In fact, I've always understood that one's right as an American citizen or having a private company is that you don't have to put your company in servitude to the policy of the United States government. You have every right to refuse, for example, to involve yourself in foreign wars. Let's remember the United States is not at war with Russia. Ukraine is at war with Russia. And I don't know where this idea comes from that when some foreign government in Kiev demands that you make your services available to their country for their war, you're duty bound to do it or you're somehow violating a law. I don't understand the basis for that at all.
No, I'm not saying that in any way it's Elon Musk's responsibility. And I agree with you that as a private company, you can do whatever you want. I was more saying that this is sort of the first time we're seeing someone, an individual, control the tools of war in a way that a private company can have such a profound effect on foreign policy that's normally the purview of nation states.
Yeah, I mean, I think that gets to a bigger problem, which is that the United States has now been outsourcing all kinds of functions that ought to be the government functions. The intelligence community is largely run by Booz Allen Hamilton. The Pentagon is run by Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. And that, I think, is an important point, that a lot of this research that these companies are profiteering on were actually research done by the U.S. government in the first place. And the American taxpayer is not benefiting from these private companies are. And that does then lead to the question, well, if the U.S. government is so dependent on the private sector to carry out even things like war fighting, then you do get into a position where what happens when these companies don't want to serve your foreign policy, as is their right to do. And that, I think, is a legitimate concern.
All right, so where did things change? You think about World War II, Ford and General Motors made tanks, they made planes, all sorts of things. They completely retooled the American industrial system to be on a war footing. Howard Hughes helped the CIA on a top secret mission to retrieve a sunken Soviet submarine, on and on and on and on. There, if not required by law, there always seemed to be a sense of duty by American companies, even either because they were being paid a lot of money, but also a sense of patriotism to sort of go along with and support the interests of the United States government. Elon Musk doesn't seem to have that. He seems to have his own worldview that is different than that. And I'm wondering if there isn't a little bit of a danger there.
I think it's dangerous to suggest that your patriotic duty requires you to make yourself available, give your assets over to a foreign government to fight a very dangerous war. Elon Musk says, let's assume he's telling the truth, that he was concerned that attacking the Russian ships at bay could lead to nuclear escalation. He was hearing that from the Russians. Is it a patriotic duty to ignore those concerns, to make yourself complicit in what could be the escalation of a very dangerous war? Don't you have the right of conscience to dissent from your own government, especially when your government's not at war? I think that's the issue.
Yeah, no, there's no question you have the right to. I guess the larger point, though, is just because you have a right to do something also means that there's some consequences later on. I wonder if all of a sudden, if the U.S. government is using Starlink at times, if then all of a sudden he decides to turn it off. You mentioned that what he was hearing from the Russians. As far as a private business person, Elon Musk is concerned, he is undoubtedly an outstanding person. This must be recognized, and I think it is recognized all over the world. He's an active and talented businessman. He's succeeding a lot, including with the support of the American state. So says Vladimir Putin. You're known by the friends you keep, are you not?
I mean, the United States is very close partners and allies with the Saudis and the murderous regime there, and the Egyptians and the murderous regime there. I mean, the nature of international affairs is that you often end up in bed with very dangerous people. But in this case, all Elon Musk was doing was abstaining from getting involved in the war. He wasn't helping the Russians. He was just refusing to get involved in a very dangerous escalation because he was concerned about the consequences. I wish our government leaders were more concerned about that as well.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about the unintended consequences here. Glenn, I think you make some really fascinating points here, especially considering now we have one man now sort of involved in foreign policy in a way that very rich men in times past have not. It's good to see you as always. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.